On the Sabbath, he was going through the grain fields, and his disciples began to make their way, picking some heads of grain. The Pharisees said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" He said to them, "Have you never read what David and those who were with him did when he was in need and hungry? How he entered the house of God in the time of Abiathar, the high priest, and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for anyone to eat except the priests, and also gave some to his companions." Then he told them, "The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. So then the Son of Man is Lord, even of the Sabbath." Jesus entered the synagogue again, and a man was there who had a shriveled hand. In order to accuse him, they were watching him closely to see whether he would heal him on the Sabbath. He told the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand before us." Then he said to them, "Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they were silent. After looking around at them with anger, he was grieved at the hardness of their hearts and told the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he stretched it out, and his hand was restored. Immediately the Pharisees went out and started plotting with the Herodians against him, how they might kill him. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Father, as we open up your word this morning, I pray that you would be with us collectively as I attempt to really kind of hit a big topic, and yet, Lord, we know that it's your Spirit that actually does the communicating. So I pray that your Spirit would be with us this morning and move among us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So most of you would know this, and I probably talk about it way too often, but I was born and raised in Alaska, but I lived for 15 years in Seattle where I was a coffee roaster and consultant. And so my job was split between two kinds of worlds in coffee roasting, right? So there's the actual coffee roasting, which you're picking up bags that are 150 pounds, and it's actually physically demanding, right? So you've got a physically demanding. And then I had these other side of the job where I'm consulting and I'm out with clients, and it's really chill, actually. You know, it's great. That's the fun part of the job. When I was living in Seattle, nobody works with their hands. Like virtually no one has a 9-to-5 job. Those guys are all living outside and they come in, right? Because they can't afford to live in the city. And so most of the people that I knew, including the people in my church, I think I was the only person that worked with his hands at all that I was aware of. And so I started to believe, like, I think we're defining work wrongly. What I'm trying to get at here is, like, there's work, and then I came up with another word, jobbing. Because you go to a job, right? Like, and then there's work where the sweat of your brow, right? Like that's work, right? And maybe you're like, I don't like that definition, but there is something different, right? There's a difference between sitting behind a desk and doing that kind of work. I sit behind a desk, okay? So I'm not against you. I'm just saying there's a difference, right? And there's a difference between that kind of work and different work. And so maybe you don't like my definition, and that's totally fine. But the question really is, when is work and when is it not? And you're like, well, that seems pretty obvious. I don't think it is. That's exactly my point. Why the jobbing and working. I was like, which one's which? Like, how do we define these things, right? So for example, like, you know, in Alaska in the summers, it's a blitz. If you own a house, you know this. Like, it's you got to get all the stuff done, right? Because it's going to get cold. So you can have your 9-to-5 day work. That's called work, right? We go to work. But this summer I took 3 days off and I had a blitz and I painted my house for 14 hours a day. Was I working? Or was I taking time off, vacationing? You see, it's a little messy, right? Or how about this? I am taking time off on Tuesday to go dip netting. Right, you can hear the guy that's dip netted before because it's physically demanding. You're going for it, right? Especially when they're coming in. It's fun, kind of, sometimes. But I'm also proxying for my parents, so I need almost 100 fish. That's work. Where does work start and stop? right? What about shelling a peanut to eat a snack? You're like, oh, Josh, don't be ridiculous. Is that work, removing the shell? When does your activities turn into work? And most of us would say, well, painting a house is probably work, right? People get paid for that. But what about shelling a peanut? You say, who cares? I think it's actually important. Here's the reason. Because what we're actually talking about here today is what happens in the text is that we have these Pharisees approaching Jesus, and the question is, what is work? And you're like, why does that matter? Well, the first century, to the Jews in the first century, it's not just a quick work, right? It's big. It's about faithfulness to God. It's about upholding His law. It even goes even further, and I hope to hit on some of those this morning. So what we're going to do this morning, if you will, and I'm sorry if I go long. I really nerded out this week. But we're going to be talking about the criticism that the Pharisees have. We're going to follow that by looking at what the Sabbath is in a biblical theology. In other words, we're going to trace, I'm not going to go every verse or anything like that. We're going to do an overview of what Sabbath is in the Old Testament. And then we're going to look at Jesus' reply. And hopefully we'll have enough time to also look at ourselves. So let's go to the first slide there. It's criticism from the Pharisees. Okay, let's pick up on verse 23 of chapter 2. On the Sabbath, he went on going through the grain fields, and his disciples began to make their way, picking up some of the heads of grain. The Pharisee said to him, "Look, why are they doing what is not lawful on the Sabbath?" So here's the criticism. They're not arguing, they're arguing here that they're breaking one of the 10 commandments. One of the 10 commandments is to keep the Sabbath holy, to rest on the Sabbath. And here's the thing, that we look at that, and we're going to go into this in a minute, like what does that even mean? Like what is this Sabbath thing? But here's the reality, is that they're wanting to keep this holy. So sometimes we get really hard on the Pharisees, and I think there's reason to in this text, like to get hard on them. But also at the same time, like they want to make sure that they're upholding God's law. The law is not a hindrance, it's a benefit. But here's the thing, they became so obsessed with not violating this particular part of the law that they had actually created more and more laws. It's around 39 extra laws to break down, like to make sure you weren't working. For example, you can walk X distance, but not any further. Because if you go any further, then that's work, right? Or laws to do about what to do about like an animal or prepping food, all these things, right? So what they see is that these disciples are picking grain on the Sabbath, and what they're doing is they're just walking through the grain fields, going like this, and eating grain. Now for us, I think a lot of times we go, they're stealing. Actually, they're not. In the law, there was permitted that they could actually grab grains, so they couldn't cut it. They could actually take it and eat it if you were hungry, right? So that part, they're not breaking the law in that way. That was part of the Jewish law. But what they're doing is eating. So this is considered work in their mind, right? Nowhere in the Bible does it say that that is work, by the way. It's just not there. So the Pharisees don't have a problem with them eating the grain. They have a problem with them picking the grain and potentially even walking, right? That could be the issue too. They're walking through the fields. So that's the problem that they're having with the violation. The second criticism is actually into chapter 3. And if you flip over there, verse 1 says, Jesus entering the synagogue again, a man was there who had a shriveled hand. In order to accuse him, this is the Pharisees, to accuse him, they watched him closely to see whether he would heal him on the Sabbath. Again, the concern is not whether the concern is about work on the Sabbath. It's not about healing. Like, they're okay with healing. Maybe. I mean, you could argue that they're not actually okay with healing in other parts of the text. But here, it's the violation that the healing was a work on the Sabbath. And thus, it couldn't actually be from God, by the way, right? Because if you're violating, that's not going to be from God. So that's the bulk of their arguments. And for most of us, maybe even all of us, unless you grew up in a devout Jewish background, we go, what? Right? I mean, what the H-double hockey stick is going on here, right? Why is this such a big deal? We don't get it, do we? I mean, just let's be honest. Let's pause for a second. We don't get it. Why is this such a big deal? This is the biggest of the deals, by the way, here. You can see what happens to them later. It's after this that they plot to kill him. You know, over this? Yeah, over this. So I think what we need to do is take a step back. Okay, we're going to put that on the shelf. That's their two arguments. Put that on the shelf, put it in the back of your mind, because we'll come pick it up again here in a minute. What I want to do is a quick overview, biblical theology of Sabbath. So if you can go ahead and go to that. There you go. By the way, if I ever misspell things, I'm dyslexic and I don't see it half the time, so I'm sorry. But here we go. Genesis 1. Actually, check that. Genesis 2, verse 1. We actually see it here. By the way, as I go through this, I cannot give a full overview, right? You nerds in the house that want me to talk about Hebrews 3 and 4, it's not going to happen, and we're not doing it today. I'm going to give a quick overview. Here we go. It starts actually all the way back in Genesis 2. Genesis 2, verse 1, thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their various array. By the seventh day, God had finished the work that he had been doing, and on the seventh day, he rested from all of his work. Then he blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of the creating he had done. So God had worked for 7 days. By that it actually means he spoke. And on the seventh day he rests, not because he's tired. Okay, there's the first thing to note. This rest doesn't necessarily mean because you're tired. Isaiah 40:28 says, do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary. Oh, so he doesn't get tired or weary. So it's not because he's like, whew, that was rough. So why does he rest? Rest isn't just about sleep. It's all about restoring. In some ways. It's about enjoying. I know this is maybe a little hard for us to understand, so here's I'm going to give you a little comparison here. So I just recently started lifting weights. It's lame. But if you're lifting weights, right, you get done with the set, you're like, I need a rest. It's because you're breathing hard, right? Like, okay, that's one kind of rest. There's also the kind of rest like you built a patio and it's a sunny day and you're going to go sit out in your patio and enjoy. That's a rest too. That's the kind of rest that God is doing here, is he's enjoying. There's an enjoying of what he has done. God created a good creation and he rests. I want you to note in the story too, there's no end of the seventh day. What do I mean by that? There's 6 days of creation, and then there's the seventh day, and it never mentions anything after that. And that's for a reason. The Bible actually recognizes the seventh day as a continuation. Hence why, he's got Adam and Eve. There's like this utopia, right? They labor in a sense, like by picking fruit. It's not that much labor. And they're enjoying, and God is there. There's actually no eighth day. What we actually see is that God has created a living, flourishing creation, and he's there dwelling with it. So it says that on the seventh day, that God actually delighted. Notice here too, there's no commandment to hold the day yet. You see that? There's no like, oh, and now, by the way, you're supposed to keep this holy. That doesn't happen yet. Why? Because every day is that day. Every day is God's rest day. Every day is our rest day. Fast forward one chapter. really far. We made it really far, guys. One chapter. What happens is the fall. This is where people go, there is this thing that they are to work, right? Like they're to rule and reign, but the reality is they need the wisdom of God, and they take it into their own hands and say, we don't need you, God, we got it ourselves. Right? Like that's what's happening here. So what happens is they go into it and they're banned. They're actually, instead of living in the light of God and his promise, they actually are now set on death. The wages of sin is death. God said that if you eat of the fruit, you will surely die. And so there's a disruption now. There's disruption to this rest. Think about it. They're pushed outside of the garden. They have to till the land. Like life is now brutal. There's thorns and things like that. And so here we go. So now we have this thing where there's a promise that God gives in that curse of the land is that he will make a way. He's going to send a head crusher, crush that serpent's head, and that life will flourish again. There's a life in that promise, right, of the future son. Singular son in that story, by the way. That death's reign will not last forever. So then what we see is later there's a man, you're like, this is going to, if you're going through a whole Bible, I am kind of, but I'll skip that. There's a man that God chooses to be his representative, and he blesses him. His name is Abraham. And he says that through him, all the nations will be blessed. And again, he comes and he is with him. He chooses a man to be a blessing to the nations. And out of him has an offspring. He's got kids. And that's the people of Israel. And eventually Israel is taken into slavery. Like God already said that this was going to happen, right? And in that story, what happens is God actually frees them from their bondage. And he promises them they're going into a land. A promised land. And then it describes things like the promised land like flowing with milk and honey. You know, the spies go in, they talk about the grapes. Hint, hint, wink, wink. There's a land that you've been banished from. There's a promised land. God is promising something. And so while they're on their way, God frees them. They're on their way. They're at Mount Sinai, which God had promised Moses that he would bring them to. The thing is that this is a people that are slaves. That's what they are. They've never known anything else. They have worked every day. That's what a slave does. We know that they made it hard for them. They've never governed themselves, and so God gives them the law. Not because God is a cosmic killjoy. I think this is where we in the West go, oh, the law seems like really oppressive. Actually, they thought it was really liberating. God's not a cosmic killjoy. Rather, he wants to bring life and flourishing to them, so he gives them the law. And it starts with this little thing we call the 10 Commandments. Out of there, they keep messing up and it keeps expanding to 613. But what you have here is that in this, there's 10 laws and 10 commandments. And these commandments actually make a lot of sense for the most part to us, right? Like, don't kill. Any society that decides like that's, well, maybe we could just kill, right? It's not going to go well. So you see that over and over again. Don't steal. Well, that's a no-brainer, right? Like a society, people, like things aren't going to go well. But in the middle of there's a fourth commandment, and it goes like this. Exodus 20, verse 8. It says, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. You are to labor 6 days and do all your work. But on the seventh day of the Sabbath to your Lord, you must not do any work. You, your sons or daughters, your male or female servants, the livestock or resident aliens who are within your city gates. For the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything in them in 6 days. And then he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath and declared it holy. Okay, so here's where we're at. God says rest. Why? Did you see? It says because the Lord rested. So they're to imitate God. By the way, when God made man, he made him in the image of God. You are a image, right? Think of statue. Like a statue, say you go into a temple, there's a statue. That's an image of the deity. That's what you are as a person. And so what he's saying is, what it's saying here is, imitate God, what God has done. God rested. Because Sabbath actually points back to the creation. God worked and he rested. Israel, you imitate him. God is creator. God is good. God's people trust him in his provision. They're going to have to go through this wilderness and they're going to have to trust him, right? What are the things he provides? Manna, right? This bread, this sugary bread. And he's promising them that you're going to go into a land. Sabbath is connected to trust. Don't go collect on that seventh day. Trust me. I will provide for you. That's what he's saying. It's trusting that God is good and trustworthy. But it doesn't just end there. The Bible often restates things in different ways, and it actually is building upon something. You go, what do I mean? Well, some people in the world believe that when the Bible restates something like, well, they didn't say the same thing, so they must have got something wrong. No. They're filling out a picture. Can you go to the next slide there, Ethan? Like this picture right here. When it comes up. There you go. So if you start right here, with it right, like you get the basic structure, right? That's a lady. But as you move along, it fulfills, and all of a sudden it becomes more and more detailed, right? That's like the Bible. The Bible does that. It expands upon that. So what we have here is we've got Israel who didn't trust God, and for 40 years they wandered in the wilderness. And in Deuteronomy, they're about ready to, it's the children of those people. And so God restates, here's the same law, okay? Deuteronomy 5. Write that in your notes. Deuteronomy 5. Be careful to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy as the Lord your God has commanded you. You are to labor 6 days and do not work, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, to the Lord your God. Do not do any work, you, your sons, your male slaves, your female slaves, your ox, your donkey, any livestock, or resident aliens who live in your city gates. So that, note that, ready? So that, here we got a different reason, so that your male and female slaves may rest as you do. Verse 15, remember that you were slaves in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. This is why the Lord has commanded you, keep the Sabbath day. Oh, the first one was to imitate God, and now it's actually for the people. You see that? It's for them to remember what God has actually done, that God has actually pulled them out. So the first one, they're to imitate God, and now we see that the people, did you notice too, it also expands on who has the Sabbath rest. It's like oxen, things like that. You're like, oh, so it's not just for you. It's for everybody. Your slaves. Why? So your slaves can rest. But it doesn't stop there. So we have this expansion of the law that starts with the image bearer of God, and do what God does, and expands to God gives this rest for the people. But then did you actually know that it doesn't stop there? Because here's the thing. It starts with this number 7. You're like, Josh, you in this number 7. Number 7 is about completion, right? It's about completion. That's why it's the seventh day. And all of their festivals are wrapped up in this number 7. There's 7 holidays. All of them are to remember the past and the promise for the future. They're all connected to the past, what God has done, and the future. So every 7 days, get this, every 7 days, they're to take rest, including your cattle. Then you have what's called a Sabbath year. That's every 7 years. And that's when you give land rest, like you rotate your crops, and there's also release of people and servants. And then there's what's called the year of Jubilee. That's 7 times 7, so for every 49 years. Then you have this land returns to the family's origin. In other words, if you got poor, you were super poor, you sold your land and you sold yourself into slavery, because that was the thing you could do, all of it is restored back. Your family gets the land back and you get restored. It's called the year of Jubilee. It's the undoing. It's the Sabbath of the Sabbath of the Sabbath. Right? It is a rest, but it's actually looking forward to a new creation. That's actually what these are all doing. They're pointing us to something where everything is restored, where things are as they should be. The Sabbath is a symbol of what God is going to do ultimately. Sabbath is about restoration, faith in God's work and His ultimate plan, because we can't do it. That's why they ended up as slaves, right? Isn't it rad? You're like, what word is rad? Sorry, I'm from the 80s. Isn't it rad? I don't know the word to say. I'm sorry. Isn't it rad? Like this idea. Like this is worked into their whole lives. This Sabbath rest. Like that God is going to do something. Every 7 days is a little bit of a mini party where we rest. That God's got this. He's going to do it. It's a little taster. Every 7 days, every 7 years, every 49 years, they're all tasters of what God is going to do. Let's look at Jesus' response to them. You can do the next slide, Ethan. Starting in verse 25, he said to them, you go rewind back, they talked about the grain. Remember that if you recall back to the grain, here you go. They had issues with the disciples picking the grain. So Jesus says to them, have you never read what David and those with him did when he was in need and hungry, and they entered the house of God in the time of Abiathar, the high priest, and ate the bread of the presence, which is not lawful for anyone except the priest. And also gave some to his companions. Then he told them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. So then, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. You notice here that Jesus doesn't directly go to talk about the Sabbath and their rules. He's actually poking holes in their heart disposition. That's what he does. Jesus often does that. He points to their heart situation. He takes them to a passage in 1 Samuel 21. David is on the run. He is the anointed king. He's already been anointed. But Saul is still king, and he's hunting David. He wants to kill him. So he's on the run. And so he goes in and asks the priest, do you have anything to eat? Now they have this bread. It's the show bread. I want you to... There's all kinds of really cool connections to bread, and I can't even go through it, but think of manna, God providing in the wilderness. There's all these pictures of that. It's happening here. But every 7 days, they rotate the bread out. And the only people that are allowed to eat are the priests. So what is Jesus pointing here? Because if that's true, he's saying well, first of all, the scholars largely were like, it seems okay. God doesn't seem to have a problem with him eating it. Why? Why is David allowed to eat this and then give it to his companions? It's because he's the anointed king. It's because he's God's man. God anointed him. God chose him to be the king. So the priests give him the bread and he eats it. Not only does he eat the bread, he gives it to his men as well. It's for them as well. So many scholars actually believe that this is a sign of God's provision for his chosen king. That's how they see it. Much like manna in the wilderness to feed the people as they walk through the land. See, here's the thing. In the Old Testament, kings were the representatives of the people. They're not just the leader, they're the representatives. So what happens is as David goes in, he's okay to eat the bread, and he then turns and gives it to his men. And here's the thing, that Jesus is actually connecting himself to this. This is what he's more interested in. You want to talk, you Pharisees, about all your little nit rules. He goes, but he's like, what you don't understand is who the anointed king is here. That's the real problem. He says, I am the anointed king. Who anointed him? When he was baptized, the Spirit of God descended and anointed him. So Jesus is the anointed king. Thus, he's the ruler of the Sabbath. He can dictate who gets it and who doesn't get it. Who gets that bread. He doesn't need a rabbi to say, well, that rule and this rule. If you're the author of it and you're the ruler of it, you get to dictate it. True? Yeah, my dog knows who's boss. It's me. I didn't create him, but I rule him sometimes. And Jesus says Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So then, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. He's declaring the purpose of the Sabbath is not for God. Do you see that? He doesn't need it. God doesn't need Sabbath. It's for us. Because Jesus is God, He is the anointed King, He is Lord of the Sabbath. Let's look at the second one. Going into chapter 3. This time, we see the Pharisees watching Him. They're looking at Him, waiting for Him to break the Sabbath. Jesus entered the synagogue again, and I think this is verse 1, yeah. And the man was there who had a shriveled hand in order to accuse Him. Why are they there? To accuse Him. Okay, so they have a motive what they're doing here. Ready? They were watching Him closely to see whether He would heal him on the Sabbath. Maybe they even planted Him there. I don't know. He told the man with the shriveled hand, stand before us. Then He said to them, is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil? To save life or kill? But they were silent. After looking around them with anger, He was grieved at the hardness of their hearts, and He told the man, stretch out your hand. So he stretched it out, and his hand was restored. What and whom is the Sabbath for? Jesus has said that the Sabbath was made for man. It's all about rest. Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath or to do evil, to save life or kill? Well, that gets back to the purpose of the Sabbath, doesn't it? That's what Jesus is pointing here. There's another way you could put this. Is God a life giver or a destroyer? Oh. Right? Because if it's about imitating God, one part of the Sabbath is about imitating God. If God is a life giver, then clearly Sabbath would have to be about life, right? Giving of life. When we rejected God, what did it bring? Death. God gave and sustains life. So doing good, right? It seems like an obvious thing here. So restoring and renewing in some ways is like the epitome of a Sabbath. He's giving rest to the man. It's not just for Jesus. He's giving rest to somebody else. I mean, I've never had a shriveled hand, but I've had an injury, and I know that when you can finally that injury out, I'm sure this does not feel good all the time. And so He's giving him rest, true rest. He's restoring him. This is God's design for Sabbath. God's design for Sabbath is a picture of what He will one day do fully. Restore. That's why this next verse is so striking. Look at it with me. Verse 6 in chapter 3, look at it. Immediately the Pharisees went out and started to plot with the Herodians against Him on how they might kill Him. Oh. These same guys that are worried about the Sabbath and Him breaking the Sabbath are there plotting, waiting, hoping to kill. Their intent is not life. As pious as they may look on the outside, their intent is not life, it's actually death and chaos. I mean, just imagine this. The whole point of the Sabbath, this rest, or this day of Jubilee, Like, I'm not making this up, guys. So this is what I'm supposed to be dreaming about, hoping for, and the picture of it, and I'm going, I can't figure out how to kill him. Oh. In contrast to them, you've got Jesus, who is the Lord of the Sabbath, to bring a true Jubilee, a true day of rest. Jesus restores the man's hand, but it's just a picture of the later Jubilee, the day when all evil is gone, when we can actually rest with God. Oh man, I wish I had time to go into. You guys, I cut like 5 pages of notes this morning. But I just want you to see, like David, he took the bread and he gave it to his men. So Jesus says that I am the bread of life, and he turns and he offers it to us as a way of refreshment. To give us life. So this morning, before we go to the table, where we actually see the picture of this life-giving, right? Because this is all connected. The king's giving bread, and bread gives life, right? Sustaining. It's like an expansion of the fruit, if you will. Well, in fact, one of it is fruit. You got juice. So how do we apply this to our lives? How do we apply this to our lives? Now, I don't have time to get into all the should you take a day off, all of that. But if Jesus is Lord of the Sabbath, then his plan is foolproof for you. You can enter his rest. Not just later. Because I think there's this sometimes we think of that. There's the one day, enter his rest. He actually wants you to do it now. Enter his rest now in a portion. It's not a fully. It's a now and not yet. They call it a prophetic perfect. That his word is as good as done. And that's why you're saved. You're not will be saved. You're saved. So you can enter that rest. What does that practically mean? It means in some ways, and there's so many things that we could go into, but it means that we can actually enter the rest now. There is the hope for the future rest, but there is this rest that we can enter now. This is why the Bible tells us, you don't need to be anxious, friends. Don't be anxious about anything. Why? I can enter the rest. I will enter the rest, and I can enter it now, in part. No matter how hard it gets, God is working to bring you into his true rest. And that's such good news. It's so hopeful that we can look at the Lord's Day, come and gather together. We can sing his praises because of what he will do, and also and what he already has done. But what I want to challenge you this morning, I think there's many things. I could challenge you about coming to church on Sunday, for example. Are we actually showing up, right? To be a part of the rest, right? To celebrate, to be a part of the celebration. But I'm not going to do that this morning because I think there's more pressing, because we're in the month of July in Alaska. If you've been around Alaska any amount of time, you know that this is the month where all of us have to do all of the things. We look forward and we go, snow is coming. And we go, I wasted my summer doing that. And so we kind of lose our mind. And some of it, I get it. I just told you, I'm going to go dip net on Tuesday. I'm supposed to go on Monday, and I feel it too. Alaskans, we play hard. We work hard, and then we play hard. But I want to ask us a question here. And this is very male-centric. I'm probably going to point at you guys. Dudes, I'm probably talking to you. I get it. But this is not the rest that we truly are seeking for. If this Alaskan dream is it, It's not enough. I think there's this other aspect too. If you look at the Deuteronomy text, it says it's for who? It's for everybody. So if you're playing and you're whatever it is that you consider rest, your adventures, and your wife is at home and she's going, well, I've got all this work to do, that is not rest for her. I'm being mean, and I'm going to continue to be mean. Because though kids are a blessing by God, for sure, it does not mean that your rest trumps her rest. It's not just sleep for her, but soaking in rest. So let me ask you a question. Are you being like Christ to her? Laying down your life for her? In her rest, too. Are you helping her find a place for the future rest? Are you pointing her in that direction to take rest? Are you loving her like Christ's bride, laying down your life and even the things that you want for her so that she can enter a rest? But also, I think there's another side. Ladies, is your honey-do list too long for the guy to have any rest himself? Remember, this is ultimately about Christ, right? Like, this is all about our future rest, yes, but we also want to remember that we pause, just like we gather on Sunday morning, to remember. But if you've got too many things for him, how is he going to enter a rest? What about church in general, the church in general? Are you playing so much this summer that you fail to see that your playing may actually affect those around you in the church? Are they able to enter rest? Is your adventure neglecting the gathering? And we can often think like, well, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, it is. We actually need brothers and sisters to sit with us sometimes, to help us, point us in the right direction. But ultimately, church, those are just, I don't even know if that's any of you, but that's the question I have this morning. Do we have eyes, though, ultimately for the ultimate rest? Do we look to Christ and go, I can actually rest? And when the rest is given to you in a small way, do you actually accept it and enjoy it? Or do you still like, I got all the things to do? Right? Do we have eyes to go that even if I am working right now, that I know that there's a future rest with Christ? That he's going to make everything right? It doesn't have to be fair. Because guess what? The gospel's not fair. In no way is the gospel fair. You don't get what you deserve.